Hello there, Seraphim17 once again. This is my Give Me God of War video walkthrough, and we have entered the secret chamber of Odin. This is quite reminiscent of Tyr's Vault, because we're going to be doing a whole host of puzzle solving, combat, and then we will be tasked with arguably the most difficult section of this game when it comes to a standard fight. And it's the most difficult fight because you're taking on two bosses at the same time. A feat that we've already done before, but these are bosses that have now become standard enemies, which is of course the Bee King guy. Svartal guy whose name is indecipherable. Oh, by the way guys, if you go the opposite to the right way, there is a nice little chamber in here with some treasure. And it's worth checking out because I think it gives you something very powerful. I think it's an enchantment that buffs all your stats by 7. Which is amazing, but it also makes my life bar longer and it triggers the fuck out of me, so I can't wear it. Because one of the things that bugs me the most about the particular run I'm trying to do, and how it's kind of impossible, is that all I want to do is have the base HP bar. I don't want my HP bar to ever grow bigger than it should. And if it was the beginning HP bar, it would be the same size as the rage bar. And they both have a nice little edge. A symmetrical edge where neither of them outshines the other like some freakish feat. But instead, because I'm using the Amulet Kvasir, which has a built-in vitality benefit, I have to have this, you know, this tripod of a HP bar just sticking out there, and it does trigger me, you know, it does trip me on the old autism spectrum, and I'm not ashamed, it's just one of those things. I like that starting HP bar. And on my next run, the good news is I'm not going to be wearing any enchantments, I'm not going to be wearing any armor, so I'm not going to have to worry about that. And I'm not going to be using the amulet either of Kvasir. The talisman will be forbidden, potentially. I guess we'll find out, depending on how boring that's going to be. Because I imagine I'm going to make the most boring challenge run of this game physically possible, and I'll probably quit it, because I can't do boring. I can do difficult, I can't do boring. But we are back inside of the travel chamber, the incredibly mundane and awfully contrived fast travel section. But from here we're going to be taking a bit of a detour to get into the place that we're going to be going towards. But before we do that, we're back at the Lake of the Nine, and I'm using my ever enjoyable sprinting attack cancel into sprinting attack, which I have a lot of fun doing. Because I just love how it seamlessly blends into the sprint. It's such a silly animation, I love it. But if you remember, there is a door around here, and it has a special key to it. We now have that special key, so we can open the door. It makes perfect sense, right? I hope I powered up the blades at the blacksmith, but there's a chance that I might not have. And now we're in Tyr's hidden chamber. So Tyr's hidden chamber, much like Tyr's vault, is what I thought Odin's secret chamber was. So when I was saying that Odin's chamber is much like Tyr's, I was completely mistaken because I meant this place. In this place we will be doing some puzzle solving, we will be doing some action, and we will be doing all kinds of different God of War things. But at the beginning, you have to wait for this dialogue to play out, and you have to damage something hanging from a chain. I think it might be hanging from a chain. It's something in the sky. Do you see it just then, that big light? When you look up at the light, the game does the whole, oh, look at this majestic thing, something must happen here. And then you have to wait for something to happen, and then it finally happens, and this door opens. But up until that point, you just kind of been like, oh, it's the travel room. It's obviously upside down, and the door opens, thankfully. And I've trimmed out all that garbage, because all it amounts to is either buffering the next area, or a waste of time. And this game relishes in wasting your time. And I don't say that as a criticism, because it isn't wasted time at the end of the day, you're playing a fun game. But there are so many moments that could be removed, and the experience would flow better. But because it is so meticulously told and so meticulously planned, there's a lot of downtime in this game. But here we are, the Hall of Tyr. This is where things get really interesting. And have you noticed those two guys in front of us? They totally look like Grendels. Not Grendel, sorry. They totally look like the Underworld Guardian guy. Remember the gold troll who had the horns and everything? Those fellas look just like him. But once you've cranked the machine, the elevator goes down. I always open up those boards filled with the mythology because it gives you free experience. It's really nice to hear the stories and the myth and everything when you're first playing, but on subsequent playthroughs it's not important unless you like doing that again. And now we're back into the puzzle solving. So here we go. Puzzles are us. Lots and lots of puzzles. These rotating blades can all be frozen, so if you use the axe intelligently, you can stop them in such a way that it will give you a path through them. And that's all we're doing here. We're waiting for them to sync up, and then we're going to be removing the axe so that they can all move in unison, and then we can find our way through. So those first blades are now all synced. We just need the next assortment to play with us. And there is a gap there, but it's a little bit too tight. So I think I'm gonna refine this a little bit, because I want to freeze this one just here. I want to make that one a little bit off kilter, and then I can stop that one, and it'll give us a bigger gap, right? And that's all you're doing. You're just kind of slowly Rubik's cubing your way through to make a hole. And once that one is synced up a little bit better, it'll give you a big hole. And the cool thing about this puzzle here is if you assort them all in quite a deadly, rotating circle of death, you can use this later on as a meat grinder against some pretty tanky enemies. And there are a few sections in this area where I'm going to be using the environment, not only because it's cheesy and I'm a bitch, but because it's incredibly fun and I love doing stuff like that. I love games that have environmental hazards that you can use. It's one of my favourite things. Because it elevates encounters to also have more strategy, even if it's cheap strategy, but strategy nonetheless. But it also makes you feel good. Like, remember the first time you played Sleeping Dogs, if you'd never played Yakuza, and you grabbed the dude and stuck his head in like an air conditioning unit, and then every fight after that you were just grabbing dudes and seeing what you could stick their heads into? It's a fun thing when you come up against these mechanics that enable you to do stuff like that. So environmental hazards are just awesome. And there's definitely a part of me that remembers OG wrestling games where you could go into the crowd and pull weapons from the crowd and pull weapons from under the stage and everything, and you could put people through the announcer tables, and those early wrestling games that weren't quite as good as they probably are now when it comes to technology, but they had all kinds of crazy cool stuff. And if you're wondering which ones I'm talking about specifically, I am talking about WCW vs NWO Revenge for the N64, because it is arguably one of the greatest wrestling games ever bloody made. It is that good. And if you're a Warzone guy or an Attitude guy, that's perfectly fine. But if you're a SmackDown guy as well, that's perfectly fine, because SmackDown definitely made a different formula and made it really, really well, and then refined it. But you can't beat that old THQ bad boy. But more Hell's Wind puzzles here. Moving these so that you can get a nice little path through, and the path is there. Could have gone for it, but I always wait just to make sure, because you never know if you're going to get cock blocked. And then when we run through here, we've got a nice treasure chest, a couple of pots, and we're going to be breaking a chain. I wonder what those masks are there at the front of the chests. I don't know if I've mentioned this in this guide, but I really adore, the kind of white gold, silver nature, and the purple embedded jewels of those chests. I think those chests look magnificent. I wish he didn't always pull out a pussy pouch when he reaches into them. It'd be cool if he picked something else. They designed maybe 3 or 4 animations. But I guess I'm a fan of florid animations. I like plentiful animations of unnecessary things. There's just something about having a lot of animations to do something simple that adds a lot of charm, and I really like that. Like, in a game where you open a lot of doors, why not have different door opening animations? Why not cycle through them? Why not have the same animation and then have a rare animation? It adds that little bit, oh, that was nice, did you see that? You didn't expect it, it made you smile. It took a little while to design it, admittedly, and it's money. Time is money, but it felt good, right? And it's nice. How many people played Modern Warfare 3 and saw the G36 reload and immediately were like, oh my god, that's cool, because you'd never seen a reload like that? That's what it's all about. Those little touches, man. I love those little touches. And I love sexy reloads as well. When people do fancy things for reloads, I'm down. I'm totally down. Like Arnold Schwarzenegger in Terminator 2, when he just racks the shotgun by rotating it around his hand. Coolest thing in movie history, right there. Every kid wanted that Western gun to do that shit. And then you tried doing it and you realised it was really hard. But right now, there is an ambient flame effect happening that damages both you and the enemies. And if you stay in it, you will take damage. I was dancing with death just then. I have no idea how I managed to come out of that unscathed, but I did. And the strategy here is the same as every strategy involving an ogre. We're going to get him in the loop and then use him to bully everybody else. And then we're going to give him a nice little axe brace and then move back over here and see what we've got to play with. Wow, that was awesome. That guy got melted somehow. We've got a bunch of Draugrs doing what Draugrs do, being generally uninteresting and getting bodied, hopefully, as I bounce this off his face. Never not fun, bouncing axes off of Draugrs' faces into Tyr's Revenge. Interesting. I thought I was going to do the Mega Plume then, but I decided against it because the flames were rotating. But when the experience pops up, it means the fight is over, and we should get a checkpoint. And this area is literally this, guys. A little bit of a puzzle, then a big fight sequence like that. A little bit of a puzzle, big fight sequence, and then we leave. And then it's really, really tough gauntlet fights that aren't that tough. And then the final boss, which is really crap.
They're just waiting for us.
And I know I'm going to probably offend a few people by saying that, but it's true. Little piece of advice here, Santa Monica. Your final boss should not be a palette swap of your first boss. That is a bad idea. That is called bad design. That is called underwhelming design. And I don't know who thought it was a good idea, because it's really, really bad. I'm baffled, right? I really am. But I have eclectic tastes, maybe it's just me. But anyhow, when you move into that room, the moment that statue comes out of the ground that's breathing those plumes of flame, if you back up here, you can get all of these heavy guys to run into these blades, and it will do damage like you have never seen. And it's glorious because it sounds really chunky too. Listen to that. Fantastic sound design. I love that sound. It's the sound of victory. And I'm going to be doing this for pretty much all the strategies in these rooms because I love it. There's just a glee that occupies my body when I cheese enemies. Which is kind of contradictory in some terms, I guess. Perhaps a double standard, right? I'm not a big fan of other people using cheesy play, but I love using cheesy play, right? Is that a double standard? Probably. But I suppose I should validate it by saying, when I criticize people for cheesy play, it's because they don't know how to play any other way, right? I think that's the thing that gives me immunity to this. I can play the game without using the cheese, because I've suffered enough to get to a point where I understand it enough to do that, right? Whereas when you see somebody who's doing nothing but the cheese, they can't. Like, it's kind of the opposite of my playstyle with Ninja Gaiden 2, where I rejoice in how cheesy I play that game, but there are a lot of people who would despise my playstyle on that game, because I spam UTs, and I love spamming UTs. I think Ninja Gaiden without UTs is immensely more difficult, and if you want to do a challenge run of that game, do no UTs. But the problem with it then is, all you're doing is trading evils, right? Because no UTs means nothing but guillotine throws into obliteration techniques, nothing but flying swallows, nothing but Izuna drops, you know, nothing but wind paths into flying swallows and such. So it puts you in a really interesting space. So if you really want to do a challenge run in Ninja Gaiden 2, you do no UTs and no iframe moves. Outside of obliteration techniques, they're fine. So you have to fight. You have to use the moves, you have to use the combos, you have to make them work. And if you've ever done base combo Master Ninja on Ninja Gaiden 2, you will understand just how difficult that game can be. But it's worth it, guys, because it makes you a much better player. And it teaches you how to use the moves, because there's so many moves in that game that nobody uses. How many people do you notice that only do like forward Y, Y, Y? Or only use like, you know, square, square, Y, Y? Or square, square, Y, or mixing combinations of moves right there. X, X, Y, sorry. You know what I mean. There are certain moves in that game that are go-to moves. Is it Y, Y, 4 Ys with the scythe, which does that massive damage to a lot of the bosses and is a fantastic, just like wrecking shop kind of move. Like, there are those moves, those Plume of Prometheuses, those Tatsuzankos, those infamous moves in Ninja Gaiden that are the ones that people use, and then there's an entire 50 list of other shit no one uses, except for Kage when he plays Sigma 2. Like, it's crazy, right? But cheesy play is so much fun, it must be said. And there's nothing wrong with it, guys. If you like using cheesy play, there's nothing wrong with it, as long as you can play without it. Unless we're talking about Ninja Gaiden 2, and then you're going to be in trouble. But here is the next fight, guys. It's two Travelers and a rotating flame move. Apparently, this guy is the Traveler champion, which I don't understand. Oh my god, that was dangerous. Did you see that? Am I a god or am I a god? It's moments like that where I know I'm the god of war. There has been no other gods like me. Now that was that was quite lucky. I'm wondering if I heard the sound of it to help me out there, or if I just had the timing down. You should never turn your back on an enemy that starts an attack. It's just a recipe for bad news. But I'm glad I managed to keep it in the video because it looked fucking sweet, right? But in the bestiary or the bestiary, there are two travelers. There's the one dude who's got all flags on his shoulders who looks ridiculous, and I love how he looks. And then there's these fellas. One of them is called a champion. I feel like the super bulky, you know, Dreadnought Space Marine one should be the champion, but I think the bestiary categorizes this guy. And the reason I say I think instead of I know is because I didn't actually use the game. I used a tertiary source, which is a wiki. And I always am a little trepidatious about using wikis because it's full of people who are wrong. So, it could be wrong. Give it a little bit of wiggle room. I've just noticed I don't think the fire does much damage to the travellers. I hope it does. That guy got bodied. Now it's just us against this guy. And this guy with the shield's annoying. Here it comes. Wow, did I sidestep that? God damn. That's dangerous. It's interesting that that grab move does not do anything to the travellers. Why? That's really silly. I don't like that. That would have been a sweet opportunity for an extra animation, right? A unique animation on enemies when you use that move. Nah. They'd rather design like ripple effects for all the sailing you're gonna do. Look at the high armor on this guy. He just does not stagger or stun when he's in the armor. Absolutely ridiculous. And I hope you understand his moves because I can't see a damn thing, so you have to understand the moves to do what I just did then. And that's the problem when all the particle effects are on the screen. That's that moment where Darkside Phil goes, how was I supposed to understand what was going on? Nobody could understand what was going on just then. Not true. You have to embrace the chaos and learn to read it. I have no doubt that there were dozens of people watching just then that were seeing this creature's animations through all that massive crazy shit on screen and dodging just as effectively as I did. Because that's what it is to play games. You know? Because what are you doing right now when you're attacking him? You're pressing square repeatedly. You're pressing R1 repeatedly. And you're just watching him to see what he does, to make sure that he doesn't hit you with anything. And it doesn't matter how flashy or bright it gets. You're looking for that early piece of motion, right? That movement that tells you that he's doing something so that you can respond. Oh, by the way, guys, this is an interesting one. So at the very end of the Traveller fight, you get checkpointed, and then these guys turn up. And all I'm going to do is stand back here and let these crushing machines come down and take everybody out. And the only problem is that the dudes with the javelins, when they get line of sight, they don't want to move forward. So to make them move forward, all you have to do is break line of sight. And the best way to do it is to move back around the corner. But I decided to move forward and fuck them up because they were annoying me. And it's funny that I did that, because the next phase I'm not going to. But you need to be in that room to trigger that trap to move upwards. When the trap moves upwards, the next spawn will happen, and it's going to be a bunch of dudes. And two of the dudes in this room are the big, heavy guys, and I don't think they want to come into my little torture device over here. They've seen enough Vincent Price movies to know that this never ends well, so they're actually quite smart, and it's going to be a little bit of a stalemate. But I wanted everybody to die at the teeth and claw of this fantastic device, so I'm going to commit to it, guys, and I think you should do too, just for science. Science and bitchiness. A fantastic cocktail of manliness right there. Manliness and girliness. Which, he's chucking stuff at us, always fun. Not to worry. I love how Atreus is just teleporting around and cruising around. Look how many there are right now. This is crazy. There's a ton of them. Just getting squashed. But if you look, they don't want to move forward. That guy does, because he's just got pushed forward. But the other guys are quite happy to sit back. So, to get around this, once I said, just move around the corner to my left. I'm not doing it at the moment, but it definitely works. Here we go. This makes them come forward and they all get squished. It's the small things, right? So now, we have, is at level 6, 2 level 6 larger enemies with the big maces, the heavy Viken guys, or whatever they're called. These guys don't want to come because they're not technically aggroed, I don't think. You can wait for the rotating flames to kill them. It will kill them, but it takes forever. So I'm going to have to push this. This is another area where I could have just edited a lot of this out, condensed it to make it look like I did it really quickly. But because I'm using this as a strategy that I want you to be able to use yourself, there's no point in me trimming it out too much because it gives me an opportunity to tell you how it flows and how it actually works. In other moments, like that time when I did the tear and I was coming up against a level 7 purple dude and I was just shooting him with the Treus, there's nothing to that. There's no agency on my side where I'm doing something to make that different. I'm just mashing square. So those moments are easy to take away. But in something like this, it is quite important to get across that these guys will literally stand in this room, like waiting for a bus that never comes. So you have to be assertive to get them to come here, to get them to be crushed. There's an interesting looking motif on this trap. Are they oarsmen? No, they're soldiers, aren't they? They're spearmen. It's like a phalanx on a cloud or something. Can't quite tell what that is. But look how easy it is when you start doing shit like that. You start using the environments and using the traps. So effective, so easy, so stress-free. Love it. But cheesy play. Cheesy play is one of those things that I think every game should have, but I also think that it should be 100% functional and fun without it. Because every player goes towards the easiest strategies. That's just how it works, right? That's the first way we gravitate. We find a problem, and then we try to find the easiest solution to said problem. And it's the reason why we're alive. It's the reason why we innovate and we create, and we've done so well as a species, because we found these shortcuts. These shortcuts that allow people who physically can't do things themselves to get to places they would have never seen without help. And that's what cheese can do. And God of War cheese, as it stands, I don't really know what it would class as. Do you think like the axe throwing is the cheese? Do you think stuff like that? Maybe using the bouncing moves with the blades is the cheese? Because this game no doubt has cheese, but other than the environmental kills and stuff, the freezing into the kicking off the ledge could be classed as the cheese maybe. I don't know. I'd have to think about that. But thank you for watching, and you take care now.